Hi guys, this is Ms. Kimmick, and I'm here today to walk you through how to write an excellent thesis statement and structure essay for any AP history class, whether this be AP World, AP US, or AP European History, and whether or not it's a DBQ or an LAQ. It's exactly the same thesis. So first off, what is a thesis? A thesis is a statement that reflects what you have concluded about the topic, based on critical analysis and interpretation of source materials, such as the documents that you get on a DBQ, right? We all know the thesis is the heart of your essay. You have to come up with a thesis before you can actually write the rest of the essay. A couple of reminders about a basic thesis. You want to make sure you use declaratory language. That means no I's, no we's, no you's, right? You want to be objective and persuasive. Make sure you have a clear position. You should be able to find an adverb or an adjective or a phrase that demonstrates how much, right? How effective were the progressives? Were they very effective, minimally effective, or not effective at all? And your thesis needs to lay out a line of reasoning. Those are the categories. How are you going to prove your argument to the reader? This is the actual rubric for the thesis point, right? And as you can see, the first quote here responds to the prompt with a historically defensible thesis that establishes a line of reasoning, right? And then you have some commentary below. To earn it, they have to respond to the prompt rather than restating the prompt. Restating the prompt means that you have no clear position. And of course, it needs to be located in your introduction or your conclusion, but really, it should be in your introduction. AP readers also want to see that you can articulate a well-planned and complex essay that recognizes historical nuance, because history doesn't happen in a vacuum. It occurs and nothing's ever perfect, right? So by recognizing that historical nuance, you're communicating to the reader that you do know this topic fairly well to make a nuanced argument. And the easiest way to outline and create a nuanced argument is with a complex thesis statement. What is a complex thesis? There are three components to a good complex thesis statement. The first one is why, which is your argument, the main point that you're trying to prove. You want to make sure that you have a clear position and has that modifier, that adverb that answers the question, to what extent. The second part number two, is your categories. These are the reasons or the ways in which you're going to prove your argument. They become the body paragraphs for your essay. The third component, and this is the newest, is the concession, or X. That's some partial truth that doesn't fully support your argument or points out a flaw in your position. It recognizes, this might not be true. So down below in the blue box, you can see the formula. Although X, comma, Y, because ABC. And over on the right-hand side of the screen, I have the 2019 AP US History DBQ exam question. Evaluate the extent to which the progressive movement fostered political change in the United States from 1890 to 1920. And an example of a well-crafted, complex thesis. Although the progressive era failed to advance the rights of African Americans through continued segregation and Jim Crow laws, comma, right? Your concession is always identifiable by a comma, and then you have the main clause of the sentence, an argument. The progressive movement was incredibly successful. That's how much they say, to what extent, in fostering political change because it A, rooted out government corruption, B, trust bust monopolies, and point number three, reformed criminal justice system for youth and adults. You can also order your thesis in a couple of different ways. So up above at the top is the main way, but you may also consider the one that I have in green. While X, consider these three pieces of evidence, and therefore here's my main argument. So what I've done is I've just rearranged the same thesis. And here you can see how it's color-coded. You can also order it in another way, with your main argument up at the front and having the concession at the end. And here you can see how it's color-coded. What's not a thesis? Most kids will mess up because they're simply just repeating the prompt. And that's because it doesn't have a clear position. Or students mess up because their line of reasoning is so vague that the reader doesn't understand what your plan is. How are you going to prove it? Structuring your essay. The order that you write your topics in your thesis is the order that you should address them in your essay. So this graphic on the screen shows what the paragraphs would be. So in your introduction, you'll have to have your contextualization and your thesis, and then notice the order that they wrote their paragraphs in is the order that they appear. What do you need in your paragraphs? Your paragraphs needs to include an assertion statement, evidence, and analysis. Your conclusion should summarize the main points, reassert your thesis, and attempt synthesis. However, that wasn't the only way to structure your thesis. For most of you, you may have a thesis that looks more like the column on the left-hand side of the screen where you only have 2 categories. Because 45 minutes is such a short amount of writing time, you may not get to a 3rd category, so you don't actually have to have one. For other people, they may have really strong 3-body paragraphs in which they want to prove their argument. In that case, another strategy to organize your essay is to pepper the concession evidence throughout the essay. This works really well if you have a more thematic approach of an expanding role of the federal government. That's a theme, right? And you can maybe put a negative consequence of an expanded role of federal government or a negative consequence of women's rights. But notice the body paragraphs stay pretty much the same of assertion, evidence, and analysis. What should you do when writing an essay? First, you need to read the prompt. Notice what is the topic, what is the time period, and what type of question is it. Is it asking causation, effects, change, continuity? You should notice that. Then you need to brainstorm. In a DBQ, it's kind of helpful if you spend no more than like 30 seconds brainstorming before you read the documents. It can help you think of outside evidence or contextualization. For a DBQ, then you need to spend time and analyze the documents. Finally, you need to group your evidence or your document. Other possible ways to brainstorm might be helpful when thinking about what type of question you're being asked to look at. So the previous examples I had about the big business, the change in continuity, you can think about what were elements of positive change or negative change as a way to start grouping your evidence. Or was this something new during this time period, or was this something that stayed the same? For cause and effect, it's helpful if you think along political, economic, and social factors, or also positive and negative causes or effects. With the comparison, divide it up. Which ones were pro and anti? For example, which ones supported U.S. involvement in World War I versus those who were against it. You can maybe think at topics, similarities, and differences. What documents point towards unity and which documents divided them? So I hope this has been helpful in examining how to write a thesis and structure your essay. If you would like, you can take a moment and write your own thesis statements for the 3 prompts that I have here below, and good luck on your exam in May.